And we deal with people who feel cheated by life, others, or God. And today we're talking about the healing journey that you can guide those people along to help them to find true comfort. Now, there are certain mile markers along the path that you're going to be taking, and that will help you to know that you're on the right path. And so we're going to be talking about those today. And so we'll be right back. Hello, Raul, and thank you for joining me here on this second training session of Beyond Betrayal. And like I mentioned, Beyond Betrayal is a program where we can minister to people who feel cheated by life, others, or God. Hey, how about for you? How big of a problem is that? I'm not talking about for you, but from your observation of other people, how big of a problem is that, or an obstacle is that for them in their relationship with God or life of faith?
Well, it's a huge problem, Carrie. Actually, we were talking behind scenes about me going to this camp at my church where there was
Mm-hmm.
this activity where people had to write on anonymous notes thoughts about anxiety, depression, suicidal, suicidal thoughts, and
Mm-hmm.
even um, issues of not forgiving their family members or family members not forgiving them. And there
Mm-hmm.
was this huge amount of young people uh,
Yeah.
from 15 to almost 30 years old that had issues with all of these sorts of things: anxiety, depression. And it was really particular the section on unforgiving and hurt by others, where people really resonated about this. So there's a lot of people out there that uh, from the outside they may seem okay, but once they have this opportunity to share their real struggles without
Mm-hmm.
uh, risk of being exposed, then the true mask,
Yeah.
the true face comes out, and they show that hurt is really part of their lives.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And I assume that this retreat that you went to was largely for Christian people, correct?
Largely for Christian people, yes, but there were like five or six people that had never been even to a church, and
Mm-hmm.
they got invited to this camp, and they were really moved by all of the activities and praying and worship and all of that.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, it was even many of the people that attended this retreat were people that have lived and grow within the church walls.
Yeah. Imagine how wonderful it would be if we could provide within the context of the church life a place for people to truly process that stuff and get it behind them. And
Mhm.
so then not only would we have this wonderful experience of worshiping God and celebrating Him together, but we would have this deep sense of being integrated and right with God and in fellowship with Him, where we could move past some of these feelings. Now, I'm not saying that that we're never going to struggle, because our brokenness will be a part of our human experience until we die. But it would be wonderful if we could take the edge off of that for people who are struggling in the church. And so that's what we're really trying to do with this program of Beyond Betrayal. Is there anything else that you want to mention along those lines before we jump in to considering the journey that we take people along to help them to resolve these things for themselves?
Not at all, brother. Let's go
Okay.
ahead.
Okay, let's go. So, what we're talking about here is how to effectively coach other people on this spiritual journey. And that it's not that complicated. I do think that part of the problem that we have oftentimes in the church is that we think that this is the domain of professionals, but it really isn't. It's something that every Christian can learn how to do, and particularly we need to have leaders who know how to do it, and to guide people along this healing journey, so that we can equip the equippers, so to speak. And so that's really what we want to do. So let's talk a little bit about the big picture here. And I have a graphic that folks who sign up for the curriculum can download, and including this presentation, they'll be able to download that. But this is the healing journey that we take people along. And you notice that there are particular mile markers along the way, and we'll be unpacking this. This is exactly the journey that I walked you along in our sessions together. I never really gave you a peek behind the scenes of what I was doing. I just knew the path that I wanted to take you along. And so, but now what we're doing is that we're bringing this up into the light of day to help people who want to learn how to do this, to coach other people along, to true spiritual comfort in their lives. And so here's the graphic for that. And like I say, you can download that, and different mile markers. We're going to go through each one of these in our visit today. But here's the goal. And I've given this a lot of thought in my life. And I find that and you were talking about this in just earlier on, about your experience at camp, that so many people had feelings of depression and anxiety and suicidal ideation and so on and so forth. And really at the root of that is that there's a lack of true peace or comfort in their lives. And so that's what I see as our primary goal in working with people, is how do we help them to get to that place of genuine comfort? How about for you? You've been open and transparent about the struggle that we were addressing in our conversations of your relationship with your dad. Do you feel a lot more peace and comfort in that area in your life now? Or, it's not like it's all behind you, but have you made significant progress in that area for yourself?
Oh, definitely. As you mentioned, it's not going to disappear overnight. There's always struggles and rough patches. But what I used to do, and we've discussed this at length, is that I pretended everything was fine. I pretended that I wasn't hurt, and I just swept everything under the rug. But
Yeah.
that eventually caused me issues. So what this path has brought me is that I'm not afraid to be transparent with the issues that come up,
hmm
how they make me feel. I can share the story of what's going on. And that, to be completely honest, I don't understand why, but that works.
It's like it's magic.
Yeah, really. I mean, it's like when you're sharing your story, when you're uh, walking this path, those little steps that you take, uh, I mean, you're not able to see the big picture. You're just
Yeah.
able to see uh, uh, at a short distance.
hmm
But then eventually, when you walk this path for a while, then you realize, once you start reflecting, hey, I'm on a different spot than I was a few months ago. So it's to be honest, again, I don't understand why it works, but it does.
Yeah. Yeah. Surprise, surprise. The teachings of Jesus truly do work, you know.
Yeah,
So,
that's right.
and the cool thing now is that you have the resources, tools, and skills to deal with additional complications when they come up in your life. And this is what I see as a big failing in the church, to tell you the truth. Just like both you and I are highly engaged and interested in the whole field of Christian apologetics. And Christian apologetics is essentially providing answers to people for the tough questions and doubts that they have about God and faith. Now, this is a component of that, because what we're looking at is how to help people to overcome the emotional problem of evil. But the tools that you use to help a person to overcome the emotional problem of evil is different than the ones that you use in Christian case making, like we're told about in 1 Peter 3:15. Always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you, to give the hope that you have within you, yet do this with gentleness and reverence. Well, this is a different skill set, but it really is part of ministering to people. And I consider it to be a missing link, so to speak, in this whole arsenal of truly ministering to people. So let me come back to our slides for a moment. And you see, the goal that whenever I work with anybody along these lines, is that I already know the goal where we need to go ahead of time. And it says, blessed are those, Jesus teaches in the Beatitudes, blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. And this is an important concept. And I think a lot of people misunderstand this. What Jesus is doing here, he's really giving us an algorithm on how we can reach comfort. And he says the path to true comfort is mourning. Now, what was the path that you were using previously? We talked about. You mentioned it just a few minutes ago. And that path was ignoring it and acting as if everything is okay when it's not.
Yeah.
Jesus did not say, blessed are those who act as if everything is okay when it's not, and they will find comfort. Here's some of the other things that Jesus did not say. Blessed are those who turn to alcohol and drugs or sex, for they will be comforted. Or blessed are those who are angry and resentful and embittered, for they will be comforted. And so there's all sorts kind of alternative paths that people take, but we seldom go down that path, or people just refuse to go down that path of mourning. Now, the problem with mourning is that most people associate that grief. We associate that with someone who has died. But that's not what Jesus is talking about here necessarily. What he's talking about is how to try to get to the place of true spiritual comfort. And he says the path to that is mourning. Now, how about for you? When you became a Christian and in your spiritual life, and everybody talks about, the comfort that we'll find in Christ, did anybody ever teach you how to mourn?
Not at all. It was, it's yes. Intuitively and I guess socially, you're taught that mourning is for somebody that has passed away, a loved one that has passed away, and betrayal. For example, right now in my life, I'm in a tough spot with my previous job, and I need to mourn what's happening. So yeah, I wasn't taught anything at all related to this.
Yeah, nor was I. And so actually, this is the fruit of many, many, many years of me kind of like beating my head up against the wall and figuring out what doesn't work. And finally, I found some resources that kind of opened up the window of understanding for me. And then, I'm the type of guy like you who's analytical in nature. And I started trying to put the pieces of the puzzle to figure out how can I really effectively mourn and also teach other people how to do that. And so that's really the goal in this. There's a couple of other key spiritual principles that are related to this, and one is Galatians 3:3, that where Paul is talking to the Galatian Christians there, and he says, "How foolish can you be? After starting your new lives in the Spirit, why are you now trying to overcome or to become perfect or complete or mature by your own human effort?" And let me share with you why I think this is such a powerful passage there in Galatians 3:3. Both you and I know that the only way that we can have a relationship with God at the start is for His Holy Spirit to bring to life the dead parts of our soul and our spirit. It's completely a work of grace. It's not a work of merit, But it's a very insidious trap that we fall into as Christians, because after we kind of jump on the grace and spirit transformation or awakening train, so once we get the ticket for the bus and we start to ride it, then we begin to think that the only way that I can really make true progress in my Christian life is through willpower, and of course willpower is so in other words, in order for me to get rid of the bad stuff in my life and to add into my life the good stuff that God wants, I need to exert more willpower. Have you ever given consideration to why that's such a failed enterprise to try to have more willpower to be a better Christian?
Well, it definitely is, because if we fight alone, we'll most definitely lose. Our energy, our efforts, our strengths are very limited. We are creatures that get tired, exhausted, mentally, spiritually, physically. So the fight, the hill is too big for us to go on our own. And that's why it's a failed enterprise, because we can't do it alone.
I'm going to give you two reasons that help me to keep in mind why this is such a failed enterprise. Number one is that if I fail when I'm trying to reach my goal through willpower, if I fail, I carry all the shame and blame. But if I succeed, then I carry all the credit.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah. And so I'm going to end up in two unhealthy spiritual places as a result. I'm either going to end up in the space of shame, or when I fail to have enough willpower, or I'm going to end up in the space of pride. If I have enough willpower, and it's a trap. Mm-hmm. I believe it's a trap of Satan. I really do. Is that when people resort to willpower. The other passage that is a key principle for us is Matthew 5:3, where it says, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." Now, I suspect there's been times in your life when you've been pretty poor. Is that correct?
Yes, that's more than once.
Yeah, so you live in Mexico, and then, of course, early on in your life, your parents divorced, and I'm sure that put you in a situation where there was a lot of unwanted poverty that came to your life. I've done a lot of ministry in foreign lands, in Cambodia and in Africa and in places like that. I've seen poverty there that I've never seen even in Mexico, or very seldom have seen in Mexico. I've been to places in Mexico. I do a lot of work in Mexico too, that, where the typical tourist never goes, And so, but one of the things that I've noticed about people who are just truly, truly, truly poor is that They just don't have the power to do what they would hope to accomplish in life. When we are poor in spirit, when we realize that we have no resources, that we don't have the power to accomplish the spiritual things that we want to accomplish in our lives, well, then that's truly where the kingdom of heaven is. Because then instead of relying on ourselves, we look to God and we find the resources in God. And so that's why these are the foundational principles of this path that we're talking about in helping people to heal, grow, and recover. So let's go on in our path here. And you'll notice that also foundational principle is strict confidentiality. And that means that we must maintain trust by keeping all information shared during coaching sessions confidential unless explicitly agreed upon otherwise. And so I don't talk to my wife about things that I talk to in my coaching sessions. I don't talk to my friends about it, that there's just certain things that need to die with me unless a person has given me permission to share those. And so I would encourage all folks who decide that they want to help others to grow, heal, and to heal, grow, and recover, to adopt this policy of confidentiality. If you don't preserve that, you have no business doing this type of work, honestly.
Definitely. Yeah, I second that. The efficiency or effectiveness of a program like this relies in a lot of ways in the confidentiality we must have. The stories people have are very personal, very sensitive, and we have no business sharing that without permission and with anybody we like, right? So
Yeah.
people open their hearts expecting this kind of confidentiality. We must respect and honor that.
Yeah. Amen. So here's the journey. I use a threefold process of active listening, powerful questions, and targeted assignments. And I'm going to unfold all of that in our next few training sessions of what that means. Right now, I'm just giving you kind of the big overview of what we do. And so, but I really believe in the notion of assignments. And the good thing about this is that people who take this, who adopt this beyond betrayal system or approach, they don't have to think through these things for themselves, because I've been doing this for years now, and all of the assignments are ready to go, and we make it available to people free of charge for them to use in their own ministries. And so then what I do after I have a person complete an assignment, and they'll send it back to me and I'll read through, but I never just read it through. I let them share their story verbally. There's really something very powerful in having a person talk about what they've written down, because they always add additional insights or comments in that. And so I always have them read through and comment on their assignments that they've made. And then occasionally I will interrupt with powerful questions. Now, in our next training, if I remember right, we'll be talking about powerful questions. If not, I know it's coming up soon. But then one of the things that I do is that I encourage them, and you know this from working with me, is that after they complete an assignment and then they give me their verbal report of their experience and thought, and as they read through it, is that I invite them to reflect on each activity and to draw from it any new insights, as well as exploring their emotional responses to completing it. So, and like for instance, when I was working with you, there would be times when you would share the information that you had written down, but then I would ask you, tell me a little bit about your experience of going through this. What was that like for you emotionally? And see, we've shifted from reporting on the content to reporting or sharing the emotional experience of that. And you would and you were very earnest about, working to achieve progress in these areas in your life. And so you would always be very open about, what the experience was like for you. And some of these assignments are pretty tough, aren't they?
Yeah, they are.
Yeah. I always tell people it starts off like this, and you think, oh, what's the point in this? And then it just starts to go up and up and up, and gets harder and harder, you know.
Yeah, it was my experience. The and again, it's hard to exactly pinpoint how it works, but if I can say something, is that
Hmm.
it is difficult because sometimes you need to revisit, sometimes even relive um, what hurt you,
Yeah.
because you need to realize how it hurt you, in what
Hmm.
different ways, how much it hurt you,
Yeah.
and all of that. And you need to realize it and bring it to conscious, aware of that. So it is difficult. The emotional response that you have from all of these activities or different activities, um, it makes it a little bit uh, hard. It's a challenge. Nobody has said that it was going to be easy,
Hmm.
but the healing process that it brings, it's totally worth it.
Yeah. 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 And so, and we're all comfortable sharing from our strengths. It's very difficult to share from our vulnerabilities and our weaknesses. And nobody wants other people to see them in that state. But that's really where we have to get. We have to get to our weaknesses. Paul himself says, "Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that the power of Christ may rest upon me." And so, and one of the things that I've noticed is that oftentimes the greatest point of our ministerial strength is in our weaknesses. Now, contrary with apologetics, oftentimes from apologetics, we're ministering from our strengths, our knowledge, our
Hmm.
expertise. But when we are ministering, when we're sharing our story with other people about, for instance, in your case, where you could share stories with other young men who have gone through the experience of their dad um, being unfaithful in the family, which, by the way, and I don't know if I told you this, so that's part of my story, is with my dad, and that and the most complicated element of my early story was my dad's betrayal of my mom. And so it didn't end up in divorce, but it was still one where my vision of who my father was shattered. And that's never an easy thing to encounter. So where we're able to minister to people from the strength, from our weaknesses, is really actually a strength in many respects. And so let's go on with our slides, because I want to make sure that we get to the next few items. And so what we need to do is that we need to pay full attention, not only to what someone is saying, but also their emotions and body language. And that's why I always do this coaching. I'm at the place in my life where I would prefer to do it actually by video chat, even more so than having personal appointments, because it's more efficient for me time wise, and I can meet. You and I would never have met for 5 months or so if it was up to us scheduling an appointment in Mexico when we could. It was just
Yeah.
not feasible.
Mhm.
So it is great to use technology, and I can also help people who are interested in how to do that with technology if they want to go down this path. So the next milestone in the journey of helping people to recover is to ask if they would like to hear your thoughts, and then for you to make useful observations and ask questions to unearth subtext. Now, there's a lot that I've packed into this particular statement, but one is that we're talking here about using powerful questions, but we're also talking about unearthing subtexts. And I'll talk more about that in an upcoming session. But there's both the text of what's going on in a person's life, but then there's also the subtext. And that's really where the I believe some of the most powerful ministry takes place, is when you start unearthing the subtext. Well, how did this impact your relationship with your dad? And how did this impact your relationship with your brother? And how did you feel about that? What roles did you have to take on as a result of this, of this change in your family dynamics? And so really begin, and what coping mechanisms did you begin to utilize and things of that nature? And so this is starting to drill down in those subtexts. And you don't have to get to all of those immediately, but if you just really pay attention to what's going on in a person when they're sharing, you're going to start having thoughts. At least that's the way I am, is that I'm naturally a curious person, and I'm going to start having thoughts about, well, I wonder how that impacted Raul, as a young man growing up. And then I just try to figure out how I could ask that question without sounding offensive.
Yeah.
So getting to those subtexts are an important thing, and we'll talk a little bit about how to do that. So, one of the things that, you never can see the cilantro that's caught in your own teeth. And that's what we want to become when we're coaching people, is we want, not that cilantro, we want to become the mirror, to say, hey, you got a little bit of, what about this here? And we want to help them to see those unpleasant areas of their life where they're stuck. And there's a way to do that. And that's what we'll be sharing as we go along in our training. Anything you'd like to say about cilantro, Raul?
It's it reminds me that even though you sometimes don't see the cilantro or whatever you have in between your teeth, sometimes you can feel it.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
you can try to ignore it and try to pretend it's not there, but that doesn't make it go away. So it connects in a very beautiful way with what we were saying before about unearthing subtext. Sometimes when we share our own story, we modify the details. We try to escape vulnerability. And we paint a picture where we're strong, we're confident, we don't have any issues, we're not hurt. And even though consciously or subconsciously rather, it's there and it's there, and I'm talking for myself at this point, because that's what I did. I knew something was wrong. I knew something wasn't right with the relationship with my father, the way that I was dealing with it, pretending that I was this strong, solid rock that nothing could hurt me. I was aware of it, but I was pretending in the deep part of my soul that everything was fine.
Yeah.
It's until that comes up where you can start healing it. You can start dealing with it, because if you don't, it's always gonna be there and affect you.
Yeah, and what it will do is actually it will impact how you do relationships downstream.
Yeah.
So, hey, I appreciate you so much being vulnerable and sharing honestly, even in this training. You have a lot of great insights. So, finally, what we want to do is that we want to create the right environment when we are working with people, and that's always an environment of empathy and support. And as the coach, you largely create that right environment for another person's healing and growth. And what you have to do is you have to make safety a priority. So people need to feel safe sharing their story with you, because you're never going to get to the parts that really need to be shared unless they feel safe. And
Yeah.
one of the big ways that you do that, by the way, is to never pass judgment. Is that my job is not to be your judge. My job is to be your spiritual coach and guide, along these paths. And I can shut down safety really quick by saying, Raul, you shouldn't feel that way towards your father. Don't you know that the Bible says honor your father and mother,
Yeah.
And you're going to walk away from that session feeling judged rather than supported, and you're going to probably be more guarded next time around.
Trying to paint a prettier picture and trying to look better, hiding in the details because you don't want to feel judged.
Yeah,
And I don't know, sometimes people in church just do this and they think that they're doing something good, but there's no wisdom behind it because perhaps you're right. I shouldn't feel resentment or hate even against someone else, my father, or could be any person. But you need to help uh, the people you're coaching see that from themselves and and follow this path until they're ready to get to that point. They hopefully in God's wisdom and sovereign plan they will get there, but it's not your job to force them to be there
exactly.
and
Yes.
take this shortcut like it's just that easy that you can say to someone, yeah, don't feel that, you shouldn't feel that. Oh,
Yeah.
you're right, I shouldn't feel that, I'm gonna change how I feel. It's not that
Yeah.
simple.
Yeah. They already know that. So, hey, thank you so much. And hey, I really appreciate your role. I do. And I'm not just saying that. I appreciate your life. I appreciate your heart for God. And I appreciate your insights. You just have a lot of great insights on these topics. So thank you for partnering with me on this project. So, we have a lot of content that we would like to share with you, and we're doing that for free. You can find that content on beyondbetrayal.org, and you can show other people the way forward. And I hope that you'll take advantage of it, because what Raul said is true, is that there's so many people, even going to your church where you're at, perhaps you're one of them, who feels cheated by life, others, or God. And so that's it for now. We'll catch you in the next